Welcome back to On the Move with Victor Shi. This is Victor Shi. It is May 11th, Thursday, and I come to you a morning after a town hall that I really only have one word for: a disaster. For anyone who watched last night's town hall between CNN and Donald Trump from start to finish, it was a disaster and filled with Donald Trump lying about the 2020 election and so many other issues. I think what's even worse, though, is that he was met with an audience who applauded his attacks on people like E. Jean Carroll and enabled him to keep lying throughout the town hall. I counted about more than 8 questions, and about those 8 questions, the majority of which were asked by Republicans. Republicans clapped for him, they shouted for him in support. It was really just a sad moment for our democracy, and yet another reminder that Donald Trump will never change, and neither will cable news companies that prioritize their profit and ratings over democracy. But there's still so much to discuss, including how Donald Trump's continued peddling of the big lie and attacking our election systems will impact the work of secretaries of state and election administrators across the country, and how we can best respond to that. And someone who's going to join me today to talk about it, and who I admire so much for her work to protect our democracy in Michigan as Secretary of State, is Jocelyn Benson. She'll join me momentarily, but she's doing phenomenal work in Michigan, protecting Michigan from the threats facing election officials, from secretaries of state. And we're going to talk about the way forward and what other secretaries of state can do, especially ahead of 2024, when we know that there's going to be increased pushes for election challenges. People are going to be calling for election results to be challenged. I mean, it's going to be a messy moment, but I think having secretaries of state like Jocelyn Benson in positions of power to really kind of provide that safeguard between what Donald Trump and Republicans are doing and full-on autocracy is really important. So it's an episode that I want to get to, and I know is going to be very exciting. So she will join me momentarily. But in the meantime, I just want to talk to you about kind of my thoughts from last night. I mean, it was such a spectacle and such an, I think, embarrassment. I did not tune in on CNN, but I was watching clips. Aaron Rupar provided a live stream, and not a live stream, it's a live tweet thread, and he really put everything into such kind of interesting kind of context. He provided clips, and if you haven't watched it, you should definitely watch it, because although I didn't watch it on CNN, I think it is really important to see and hear just how kind of brazen Donald Trump's lies were. And yesterday, one of the most disturbing parts, like I said in the introduction, wasn't just Donald Trump's lies. And I tweeted about this last night where, I don't know what's worse. I mean, Donald Trump appeared more unhinged, more reckless, more dangerous than ever before with his lies about everything from refusing to accept the 2020 election results to attacking E. Jean Carroll to calling Caitlin Collins a nasty woman or a nasty person. Or, I mean, what's even worse is the audience and the people that CNN chose. And there's no way that CNN could have chosen this audience without doing background checks first, without vetting their questions, without intentionally knowing who each and every single one of those people were. And they were largely a sympathetic audience to Donald Trump. And Ruth Ben-Ghiat yesterday tweeted, I thought, what was perfect. And for those of you who don't know Ruth, we've had her on this show before, but she is an expert on fascism and authoritarianism and how these fascist movements build and kind of fester. And she tweeted this really interesting thread, which is CNN became a party to Trump's need to psychologically undo his defeat by getting the audience to applaud him, quote, for being an assaulter. The more approval authoritarians get, the more they feel emboldened to be even more lawless. This is why this town hall was so dangerous. And then she added just a kind of when the town hall first started, as a scholar of fascism, this is deeply familiar. This is a propaganda spectacle designed to reinforce the leader cult, thus the relief and enjoyment of the audience at hearing favorite slogans and untruths. And for anyone who watched it last night, you just have to wonder, who are these people clapping for him? I mean, these people were chosen for a reason. I think they really allowed Donald Trump to kind of channel his worst within him. But also, I mean, having someone like Caitlin Collins moderating, I don't doubt that Caitlin Collins tried her best. But for those of you who call Caitlin Collins heroic or that she did a stellar job, I'm not sure I agree. There were many moments that she let pass. There was this one moment with an abortion moment where Donald Trump was spewing anti-abortion rhetoric and Caitlin Collins just remained silent and on the sidelines. And it's just kind of, we need, first, I think kind of real-time fact-checking is probably lost with being able to control Donald Trump. And second, I just don't think, it's possible even to rein this person in. He kept on controlling the narrative. He kept on taking over. He kept on basically kind of offering his take on things and then talking over Caitlin Collins. Every single time Caitlin Collins would answer a question or ask a question, Donald Trump would say, excuse me, or, I'm still talking, or that's very rude of you. And it's just kind of this continued pattern from Donald Trump to continue kind of taking over the narrative, controlling the conversation, allowing his narrative to build, and then basically silencing, attacking anything that he deems a challenge to him. And so, if there's one lesson, I think first, it's just knowing that cable news companies like CNN, and remember 60 Minutes did Marjorie Taylor Greene just a few weeks ago, these cable news companies really prioritize profit, ratings, audience over democracy. And that's a shame in itself. But second, if we were to take any lesson, hopefully, from yesterday's interview, it's that Donald Trump really is, hard to change. He is almost impossible to change. I mean, you think of what Adam Schiff said during the first impeachment of Donald Trump. No matter how much you try to teach him, no matter how much times you try to hold him accountable for his wrongdoing, this man will continue remaining Donald Trump. He will continue perpetuating the big lie. He will continue breaking laws, shattering our institutions. This is who Donald Trump is on a fundamental level. And to get to think that, a town hall or a harsh moderator will get him to change his views is just, I think, a dangerous proposition for the media, but also for the rest of our country that I think is so concerned about our democracy. So yesterday, I think, was, for me, a concerning part. If you watched the town hall, what did you think? What did you think about kind of the clips that you saw, the segments you saw? Are you concerned? Are you bullish? Are you bearish? To me, I'm a little bit bearish because I time and time again, I hope that the media learns, and I want to try to maintain that hope that hopefully, they will learn something. But things like this just kind of give me this sense that they aren't learning, and no matter how hard we try to get them to understand that, people like Donald Trump should not be platformed for the exact reason that we saw last night. I don't know when they will learn. And hopefully last night's, at least on Twitter, I know Twitter isn't real life, but it seemed like everyone who I was following on Twitter thought what happened yesterday was nothing short of a clown show, a circus. And no matter how hard Cameron Collins tried, it still happened to be Donald Trump's show. And the only person who benefited from this was Donald Trump. But also, I think Democrats had a lot to gain from last night too. You saw President Biden tweeting out this video, basically comparing Donald Trump's words to what actually happened on January 6th. He offered another tweet that basically said, would you really want 4 more years of this? And I think for a lot of Democrats, as one Democratic strategist said on Twitter this morning, I mean, this town hall brought them months worth of content. They could basically clip any one of these moments and frame it as Donald Trump is a dangerous president. Do you really want this man to be leading the country for the next 4 years? And I think that's maybe one of the silver linings behind this, but ultimately it's hard to find any optimism from what happened last night. CNN doesn't seem to be learning its lesson. Yesterday on MSNBC, 11th hour, Stephanie Ruhle, I think, said it best when she said, what happened on the 8 p.m. hour and on another network isn't news. Instead, what they're going to focus on is how to cover Donald Trump. And she said, what we need to do tonight is solve for how news organizations will cover Donald Trump, the twice impeached, indicted, liable for sex abuse private citizen. And I think that's exactly right. She hit the nail right on the head. This is not the moment we're going to analyze every single one of his lies. It's about how to cover this person who, while he may be the front runner of the Republican Party for president, he's also at the end of the day a private citizen, someone who nonetheless has been impeached 2 times, indicted once, remember, 34 counts of felony, and also liable for sex abuse of E. Jean Carroll. And last night, he also invoked E. Jean Carroll's name. And I hope that if Robbie Kaplan or if E. Jean Carroll's lawyers are listening, it should be hopefully another defamation lawsuit. Jack Smith, I hope he's listening. Basically, Donald Trump admitted to carrying documents from the White House to Mar-a-Lago. I mean, this man is admitting his guilt on a day-to-day basis, and every platform that he has to admit that truth or, talk about his perspective, it seems like it gets worse for him. And so we'll see what happens on that end. But what happened last night, for me at least, was just nothing short of a disaster. It was a debacle. It was an embarrassment for anyone who cares about news, facts, journalism, democracy. So we'll all, kind of hopefully pay attention to that. Just a couple of other things. I'm not sure if our guest is with us yet. I know she's wrapping up an interview on her end, and so hopefully she'll join us soon. But Secretary Benson will join us shortly to talk about the threats facing our democracy, how secretaries of states can best respond to that, and kind of what the path forward is, especially against this kind of really dangerous moment where you have Republicans and this one party that is completely kind of untethered from basic truth, from democracy itself. So we'll get to that shortly. Just a couple of other things that I noticed yesterday. First, or I guess there's a new poll out from Voters of Tomorrow, which is the organization that I'm a part of, and there's some really interesting statistics. First of all, President Biden still has a 53% approval rating from those ages 18 to 29, which is a pretty big approval rating. I mean, compared to his past approval ratings, this is a pretty big jump up. So young voters are continuing to support President Biden, which is good news and a good sign. And even better, when you look at voters of color, 70% of Black people support President Biden and approve of the job that he's doing. 75% of Asian Americans support President Biden and the job he's doing. And if given the choice, just slightly under half of young voters would vote for President Biden right now, which is 35 points more than any other Republican candidate. So when you look at kind of what young voters are thinking right now, I think there's this one narrative, which is from a lot of older folks, to say, oh, well, maybe young voters are not really tuned into politics. Maybe young voters don't really like President Biden, but that's just not true. At the end of the day, what we're seeing from these polls is that young voters will choose President Biden at the end of the day, because just like President Biden often says, it's not about the almighty that you should compare me to. It's about the alternative. And I think people in America, I think people my age really understand that if they see kind of the choices in front of them, President Biden and Donald Trump, and they see, just how different they are and what a clear contrast the two people represent. And I think that's what these polls show, is that at the end of the day, young people will vote for President Biden and will help him get reelected in 2024, because they understand if you elect someone like Donald Trump, what we saw last night, it's just going to be a disaster, not only for our lives, but also for democracy in general. And anyone who cares about the basic kind of principles of democracy, that's what's going to happen if you elect someone like Donald Trump. And so gives you hopefully a little bit of comfort knowing that young voters still support President Biden. The majority of young voters still support President Biden. And I think that number is only going to increase as we head into 2024, when you have President Biden really selling his message and his vision and his accomplishments for the rest of the country, but also for, as I think young voters start becoming aware of this contrast between Democrats and Republicans, and seeing that Republicans just are not acting on any of the issues that we care about. And I don't think that's going to change anytime soon. Yesterday, Dianne Feinstein returned to the U.S. Senate. She was seen being escorted into the Senate. Chuck Schumer was with her. She was saying hello to everyone. Seeing that moment, to me, I don't know if any of you saw the pictures, but I posted it on my Twitter. She was in a wheelchair. She was recovering from a case of shingles. I'm glad that she's better. But for me, and I think a lot of people who responded to me on Twitter also kind of felt the same way. I mean, seeing Dianne Feinstein in that kind of situation where she's in a wheelchair being escorted into the Senate with recovering from a case of shingles, to me was a little bit painful, honestly, and concerning. I mean, this is someone who's 89 years old. She's led an incredible career. I don't doubt that at all. I don't undermine that at all. I don't try to overlook that. She is someone who has paved the way for so many women. The things that she's been able to accomplish and do within her career has been nothing short of remarkable for women. But when I see those photos, it's this isn't even about gender. This isn't about age. It's really about capacity to serve. And seeing someone like that come to the U.S. Senate and kind of push through, even though we all know she shouldn't have to, and she doesn't have to. She should honestly be enjoying retirement, spending time with her grandchildren, her children, but she's right now in the Senate, and I just don't know. I mean, I hope that she has the capacity to serve, but it seems like, given her situation, it's just a kind of a painful kind of end of her career. And I just hope that, she can return to the Judiciary Committee. We can subpoena.
Can I turn up the volume? Hi guys.
Hi, how are you?
Good.
Wonderful.
Good.
Can you hear and see me?
We're working on it. Yep, I'm working
Okay.
on it. I think I can. I got you. Thank you for
Sounds
your
good.
patience.
Of course. Thank you so much for joining me this
connect
morning.
with you. I'm such a fan of your work and your
you.
voice and your strength. So thank you so much for everything you do and for reaching out.
Thank you. Well, we have so much to talk about, and I have so many questions for you, but I want to start off with a tweet that you wrote about last night regarding the CNN town hall. You wrote, I'd love to tweet live. I'd live tweet a factual correction to all of the lies and falsehoods being broadcast on CNN right now, but I'm too busy worrying about all the election administrators who are going to be subject to a new wave of threats and harassment because of the amplification of this nonsense. Talk to us about how Donald Trump's words last night will translate to election administrators and secretaries of state like yourself.
Yeah, I mean, it was sort of a real-time response that I was tweeting out as I was about to say, these are all, I mean, it was just lie after lie after lie.
Yeah.
And then you just know what does that mean? It doesn't, this sort of reinforcement of the misinformation that has flown into our communities for years now. But it means that the threats and the harassment that have stemmed from that we've all endured, that 33% of election administrators say they have felt personally, and has led nearly 20% of election administrators to leave their jobs over the last
Wow.
several years. Like, that's the reality for folks. That's
Yeah.
when we try to shift the conversation from the deception to the truth. Like, that's the truth. Not only are our elections secure and the results an accurate reflection of the will of the people, those who make sure that's true are the ones who are on the front lines getting the actual sort of like impact,
Yeah.
violent in some ways impact of the lies that our politicians like the former president are sharing.
Yeah, and I want to get to that later in the conversation, but just for maybe a little bit of context for people who are kind of looking at secretaries of state and wondering, what they do. I think it's worth clarifying in this moment when Republicans and Trump are attacking people like you and what the roles of secretaries of state are. Paint that picture for us and where kind of you fall in the administration of elections and kind of protecting democracy more broadly.
So as the Secretary of State of Michigan, I'm the chief election officer of one of the sort of the highest profile battleground states in the country, a state where our voters have consistently not just had an impactful vote in a presidential election, but we've gone either ways. I mean, in 2016, Michigan voters supported the former president, President Trump. In 2020, Michigan voters supported President Biden. So in many ways, that plus our demographics really make us a microcosm for the country in a way that is also a bellwether, which leads to the spotlight. So my job is to make sure that we're ready for that spotlight, that our democracy, our election systems are ready to meet that national moment, and then to support administrators in other states, particularly in my neighbors in Wisconsin and Pennsylvania, and as well as Arizona, Nevada, and Georgia. We're all united against, for lack of a better word, a common enemy or common pressures for our democracy. And so sharing best practices amongst each other and supporting each other is a big piece of what I'm a part of as well.
I mean, that unity is so important. Like you said, I mean, the level of threats that election administrators are facing right now is really revolting. But when you live in a society in which you now have, I mean, a segment of the population that fundamentally doesn't believe in the sanctity of our elections and democracy in general, how much harder does that make your job and what you're trying to do? How do you respond to that?
Well, first we start from, I mean, we acknowledge that it's tough. That's tough to hear because we work hard every day to make sure the opposite is true, that our elections are reliable, that our democracy is thriving. And so that said, we move forward knowing that the truth is on our side, that history is on our side, law is on our side, the Constitution of the United States, who we are as Americans, it's all on the side of democracy and protecting democracy. So I'll go into battle every day of the week with those tools in our toolbox. And that's how we kind of approach this. We all in the moment have a responsibility to ensure our democracy not just survives these challenges, and this challenge is brought by both the former president and many others, but that it emerges from this time healthier and more robust than ever before. And that's also what our story in Michigan is, that at the same time we've been enduring all of these threats and challenges and even physical threats to myself and my family and others, at the same time, we have expanded our democracy in our state. More people are voting than ever before. There are more options to vote or register to vote than ever before. So we recognize the duality of that story and really try to endure this moment, knowing that when we emerge, we're going to be better for it.
And I want to get to all those good things later on in the episode, but I want to ask you about 2024 because after last night, it seems like the threats facing people like yourself and also just elections in general is only going to increase. And I'm wondering what you're seeing in Michigan right now about some of the challenges and threats that we might be facing. Should we be more concerned than 2020, or are things kind of looking better on that end?
Yeah, I think after January 6th, 2021, we really saw in Michigan that the threats we'd have been enduring and the challenges facing our democracy that we've lived through throughout 2020, that was actually just the beginning. That this was going to be a multi-year, multifaceted effort to try to dismantle democracy in America. And that Michigan, along with Wisconsin and Pennsylvania, and those of us who are in the line of fire in 2020, that we continue being in the line of fire all the way and up to and through 2024. And then secondly, we also realized that knowing that the opposition to democracy and those trying to dismantle it were only going to get stronger and more sophisticated, frankly, over
Yeah.
the years.
No.
We had to prepare for that. More money would probably flow into the efforts, more coordination, more strategy. They were going to, I imagine, look at their losses from 2020 and try to regroup and come back stronger. And everything we've seen, particularly in the town hall, but from the former president and his statements, really underscores that reality. But the last piece is that we've been getting stronger too. We're more organized, we're more wizened, we're more strengthened and prepared than we were in 2020 because we know the abyss that we're staring into and the depths to which those who are against democracy will stoop to dismantle it. So we're ready, and we're going to be ready. But it's also going to be a battle.
Yeah, I mean, I think Michigan is really a model state for other states to look at, not only in how to respond to these type of threats, but also, like you said, you all have done a lot to expand democracy too. Can you talk about kind of what worked in 2022? We saw record level turnouts on college campuses. We saw amazing results across the state. What have you done to kind of expand democracy, and what do you suggest to other states that are trying to kind of do the same and combat voter suppression?
Well, so much of our success is really about our voters. Our voters have worked not just in 2018, but in 2022 to organize around the state to amend our state constitution to expand democracy. So now in 2024, we will have 9 days of early voting, which we haven't had before. And that's the result of a ballot initiative that voters supported and enacted in 2022. So Michigan now is a state where you have not only no reason absentee and permanent absentee mailing list. You have drop boxes for every 15,000 voters. You have prepaid postage guaranteed for every citizen seeking to mail in their ballot. You have 9 days of early voting. And of course, also, if you choose, the traditional in-person precinct election day voting. So all of that has been expanded. And then secondly, in response to that, we have worked to invest in our election infrastructure, to support our clerks, to continue recruiting election workers. Yeah. And we're working right now with our lawmakers to ensure all of these new changes that we have the support in place to make them real and implement them smoothly next year. So our democracy continues to expand in our state, driven by voters. And I'm proud as the chief election administrator to help make real their vision.
Yeah, no, you're doing such amazing work, and you think a lot about elections and democracy. And one of the things that I wish kind of more people knew about are all the cool ways that even young people who are 18 years old can kind of plug in with democracy and really make a difference with elections. Can you talk about some of those ways and kind of how young people and people in general can contribute to the safeguarding of elections and protecting election results? How can people get plugged in on that level?
So critical for everyone to be plugged in. This is an all hands on deck moment for democracy. Here's 3 things that folks can do. Number 1, sign up to be a poll worker in your community or in your state. As an election worker, you have the ability to ensure the voting process is smooth for everyone and learn a lot about why it is so secure and reliable. And then the second piece is, with that information, be a truth teller. Help use your position of influence as a young person, in some cases as a college student, or however you have developed your platform. Tell the truth about our elections. Respond to information, but proactively also educate people about how to vote and just how secure our elections are. And then third, work with your election administrators. We're working with many right now to help advise us on how to better meet people where they are, meet young people where they are, and ensure our election system, our voting system, our method of counting votes is transparent and accessible to young voters who are often also first-time voters. And we want to make sure they have a good experience and become lifetime voters.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that is, I think, the best way to end this episode, by empowering our audience. Secretary Benson, thank you so much for joining me and for all that you do. I really appreciate it.
Thanks. I look forward to hopefully coming back sometime soon. Thanks for having me.
Thanks so much.
Thanks.
Wonderful. Well, Secretary Benson is amazing. And just a quick programming note, we will be back tomorrow at 8 a.m. Pacific and 11 Eastern, right here on youtube.com/Politicon with Steve Vladeck, who will join us to talk about all things Supreme Court related, some decisions that are coming on today, and also the shadow docket. So you don't want to miss that. And I will see you all tomorrow. I hope you really enjoyed this episode with Secretary Benson, and have a great rest of your Thursday.